Learn from our wins and losses from 3 months of Yep.
This is the Yepcast, where we're building a tribe of creators, movers, and shakers,
and inspiring young entrepreneurs to learn, think, and support one another.
Welcome back to the Yepcast, everyone. This is the final episode of Season 1. My name is James Nuveen.
And my name is Madeline Martini. Welcome back, everyone.
Again, this is the final episode of Season 1. This has been a tremendous learning opportunity for not only us as the founders of the Young Entrepreneurs Project, but also you guys as the listeners and the audience and the Yep Tribe. And we hope through these 12 episodes of our podcast, the Yepcast, that you have taken some actionable, relevant steps to not only improve your college careers, but your personal lives, and hopefully, in the future, your careers as a founder in the startup world.
Exactly, James. But we'll be back in 2019 with a whole new season. Listen at the end for some details around that. It's very exciting and we're very pumped. But in the meantime, we will still be online and available and still pumping out awesome resources. You'll still be getting the pivot and a lot of other resources that James and I are excited to show to you guys. So without further ado, on to In the News.
My article this week in the news is all about productivity. Madeline and I follow a publication called The Hustle, and a lot of you guys in the Yep Tribe might also follow this publication. It's a daily newsletter based out of San Francisco, and they deliver all kinds of startup and productivity and self-development news, mostly about the startup world and tech and software worlds. But this little note in the Hustle that I read today is all about toxic productivity. And what they meant by that was they read an article in Business Insider about an HSBC executive, and that's a investment banking firm if you don't know what HSBC is, about an executive working for that company who has a very interesting schedule. I'll put it as that. Her name is Melania Edwards. And her daily schedule consists of waking up at 5:30 a.m., meditating. 6:30 she catches up with friends. 7 a.m. she goes for juice. 7:30 a.m. she's playing tennis. And before 9 a.m. she's already done all of these different things. And the Hustle claims that this is toxic productivity. But in addition to that, at 2:30 p.m. she travels from San Francisco, where she works, all the way to Stanford to earn a degree in creativity and innovation at the D School, which is the design thinking school of Stanford. And then at 7:30 p.m. she goes to yoga, and 8:30 p.m. she experiments with new recipes, cooking wild foods with her boyfriend. And in her free time, she mentors women in Papua New Guinea. So this is an insane schedule. And the point that the Hustle wants to make is that should you be sacrificing a bunch of different things that she could be doing instead of these things, but she doesn't. I hope she loves doing these things. But the point that they're making is that she's always running around, she's always busy, and that she doesn't have a single waking hour for her personal life within those however many hours she's awake during the day. And what I was thinking when I read this is that who are you to say that these things aren't important to her and that she's not finding fulfillment and joy in all those activities? Like, I know Madeline is a very spiritual girl, and waking up at 5:30 a.m. to meditate would be something that she would love to do.
Yeah.
So I was just so confused to see the Hustle kind of not calling her out, but warning their readers about toxic productivity. When someone is working hard and fulfilling their goals in their personal life and professional life, that's not always toxic productivity, even if they're working like every single waking hour of the day. If they're doing what they love, isn't that good productivity?
I honestly, I read this article too because you sent it to me earlier, and I was like blown away by the amount of stuff she can do in a day. I didn't know the Hustle's take on that at all, but yeah, I agree. That's not their place at all to say what brings others joy. And that is one thing I've found as an entrepreneur too, even doing Yep and with work, a lot of people will just naturally question what you're doing. My sisters always make fun of me. They say the two things I'm always saying I'm doing is I'm cleaning and I'm editing. So I'm editing the episodes and I'm cleaning my apartment. But honestly, that sounds nerdy, but both of those things bring me a lot of happiness and joy. Just because I know I'm doing something not for cleaning. Honestly, I don't like that, but I'm talking about editing. Brings me a lot of happiness and joy. So that's not anyone's place to say otherwise.
And sometimes it takes a little bit of dirty work to get to that joy. Like, if you love having a clean house, you're going to have to clean it, which isn't a very joyous activity for a lot of people or very glamorous. But if your number one life goal is to have a clean house, then why not take those dirty steps to clean your house? And that way you'll have a clean house. See, that for entrepreneurs, that's kind of hard for people to understand outside of our world, where they may not see the benefits of doing the dirty work and the muddy work. But anyway, that was my news for the week. Madeline, what do you have?
Last week, Target announced their Target Incubator Program. This is an absolutely incredible program they're doing for young entrepreneurs. Anyone with a Gen Z mindset is how they define that. I honestly don't know for sure what that means, but I guess if you're young, you can apply. It's an incredible program. Apply now. Applications are open, and the program starts from April to June 2019. It's an 8-week incubator program, and you'll get to be at their Minneapolis headquarters in a space with all the other young entrepreneurs working on their project. It's fully funded for you. You get $10,000 in housing. This would be an absolutely incredible program. So definitely check it out. Definitely check it out.
I remember sending that article to you on Instagram, Madeline, and it said that they're completely opening up to dreamers, creators, makers, imaginers, engineers, innovators. And that's really cool to see for a pretty large corporation, because you don't see that very often from outside of Silicon Valley or outside of New York City or Boston or Austin. So I congratulate Target on that. That is awesome. That is a great project, and can't wait to see where it goes, what kind of stuff they build.
Yeah, it's awesome.
For our finale of the first season of the Yepcast, Madeline and I really wanted to deliver a big piece of value for our listeners and for our Yep Tribe as a whole. And in this episode, we are going to talk all about the 3 major lessons that we've learned throughout the first 3 months of the Young Entrepreneurs Project. And those are empathy, the importance of empathy, and starting from a place of empathy, the importance of relationships, and specifically for Madeline and I, the relationship between co-founders. Because, well, I'll get to that. And then finally, having the patience to wait out a potentially bad situation, and the grit and the perseverance and resilience in the face of bad times. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to, again, provide as much value in this episode as possible. So when you guys go off and start your own business or start your own podcast or your blog or whatever you creators, movers, and shakers are doing these days, we want you guys to start with some knowledge about starting your own company from the ground up, which is what we've done in the last 3 months. Right, Madeline?
Yes, and we've learned a lot more than these 3 lessons. We just boiled it down to these 3, just so you guys have some more easy takeaways, and these are what we learned most impactful. So kicking it off, we're going to start with empathy, because everything at Yep that we've learned has to start with empathy.
Yes, that is awesome.
So James, what does empathy mean to you? And I remember this was one of our core values in the beginning, but I think the word has changed a lot for us over the course of the months. So what do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, as I've talked about a little bit throughout the Yepcast and throughout my blogs, is that serving first has to be your mentality when you're an entrepreneur. It has to be. If you don't exist to help others achieve their goals, then there should be no reason you're an entrepreneur or a creator in this world. Because that's what entrepreneurs and creators do. They're very, very selfless people. The purpose and your goal, your purpose and your goal in life should be to help others achieve their goals. And that's really what empathy is. So I think with our case study, let's call it YEPA case study, we have really scratched our own itch, in the sense that when we were in college, I'm still in college, but when I was a little bit younger, I had no support system. And Madeline didn't really have a support system either.
Yeah.
We didn't have other young entrepreneurs to surround ourselves with who could understand what we were going through and understand our ideation sessions and brainstorming sessions and our need and yearning to create value for other people. We didn't have that support system. So what did we do? We created it. And that's scratching your own itch. So Madeline, I remember telling you this summer, I met with one of my favorite people in Cincinnati this summer, and she is a co-founder of a software startup in the Startup Cincy ecosystem. And what she told me is that she used to work for a big corporate company, and what she did to create her startup is scratch her own itch. She found a lot of problems with the culture at that company, and moving from job position to job position or department to department, she realized that there was really no synergy throughout the whole company. So she quit and decided to take on that mission as a startup. So she scratched her own itch. And I think that's really one of our main philosophies of empathy in this whole project. We want to help people go through what we have gone through, and hopefully in that process provide some value to make it even better than what we experienced.
A lot of founders' stories, I feel like you'll hear, like James said, they scratch their own itch. And I think if you don't start as your own customer, you can't ever really truly feel the value you're providing and even know where to go after that. So one thing I learned, I will say I've always been empathetic to this kind of cause, because we both did feel a lack of community for young entrepreneurs. But the one thing that it wasn't always top of mind for me to always be empathetic throughout the entire process. So
Sure.
With anything we put out, James always has been really good about asking the question, does this provide value? Will this teach everyone something? Is this moving everyone forward? We try to live, by that. Is this moving everyone forward? And if it's not, we scrap it, which is really hard, because as an entrepreneur, I really, I think everyone does, but you build attachments to what you create or your ideas. And sometimes you have to let that go to the wayside and put the value first and have empathy first. So I think that's been my biggest lesson, and I'm still learning it.
And you want to hear a real life example of what Madeline just said? Well, you're living it, because we just scrapped almost this whole episode because we realized we were not providing enough value to our listeners.
I think that's really important for us to be transparent with you about these kind of things. We have scrapped in the past. We've totally pivoted on episodes. Even today was a total pivot. We ask this question every day, and I think this is a lesson that you never stop learning. You have to be super aware of it. Otherwise, things can go to the wayside.
Speaking of going by the wayside, in 2016, the World Economic Forum took a poll of the world's companies and tried to measure which companies were the most empathetic and which companies were the least empathetic. And guess who was number one?
You want me to guess? I'm not going to guess.
You're not going to guess. You're not going to guess. It was Facebook as number one in 2016. And if you took that same poll this year, the World Economic Forum hasn't come out with the stats for 2018. But if you took that same poll this year, I bet my bottom dollar that Facebook will be almost dead last in that ranking. So they lost touch with their consumers. They lost touch with their audience, their clients, their users. They lost touch completely because they lost touch with their values. a lot of people empathized with those values. They identified with those values of connecting the world with a social network. And in the last few months, that has, again, totally gone by the wayside. So people don't forget things like that. When they're wronged or they're taken advantage of, your credibility as a company is gone. And you almost always cannot get that back.
And that's something that James and I never want to do here on Yep. You can never break that promise. And with your own customers, as you're starting your own companies, never break that promise. Always put others first and you'll be fine. Sometimes, yes, you'll have to let go of your ideas. You'll have to let go of all of your hard work. But in the end, that's worth it because you're providing value, you're changing the world. And that's why you got in this after all.
And as we go on into the future, empathy will only become more and more important. By 2030, I think about 30% of jobs are set to be automated. So that means the human element in us that robots can't do, they cannot feel. We can feel. So empathy just became that much more important. The future of work is human. So when you create your company, or your blog, or your podcast, or whatever you're creating, you need to be taking a very human-centric perspective when you're solving problems. A very design-thinking approach. You may have to test it, and A/B test it, and A/B test it again, and A/B test it again. But in the end, you have to be solving people's problems and connecting with them on a very emotional level. Next up, we're talking about the importance of relationships. So Madeline has been drilling this into my head as we've started the Young Entrepreneurs Project, and a game that she has always asked me is, would I be okay being trapped in an elevator with her? And I think my answer would be yes, most of the time. But other times, no.
Thank you.
But for a lot of people, not asking that question before they take that leap of faith, before they jump off that cliff with their co-founder, that's a huge risk. If you don't trust that person, if you don't have that connection with that person.
Yeah. So I think that's probably one of the most important decisions when starting your company is choosing your co-founder. And also just choice in general is if you are going to even have a co-founder. Personally, I would recommend it because I think it's good to have someone to bounce ideas off of and who thinks differently than you, because you'll be stuck in your head a lot. And sometimes you can't learn as well if you're not learning with others. That's kind of my personal philosophy. So when you choose your co-founder, definitely choose wisely. And like James said, I asked that question. I think it's super important because you will be spending a lot of time with your co-founder, more time than you probably could ever even imagine. I know just between James and I, these past 3 months, we've sent 20,000 Slack messages to each other, which that's kind of crazy. That's more than I talk to a lot of other people in my life. So choose very wisely. But anyways, going off that, the hardest part, I think, for me with this and my biggest lesson has been not really choosing James as my founder, because we kind of chose each other and we chose this cause together.
The idea chose us.
The idea chose us. Yes, James. But beyond that is maintaining the relationship, especially if you're friends before you're co-founders. I think that adds another element to it. And a lot of times you will see businesses split and co-founder relationships who were friends are not friends anymore. So you have to be super cautious of this going into business and really make sure you're always empathetic towards the other person.
I think one of the most important elements of a co-founder relationship is the diversity. So the balance between people's skills. And when I think of that diversity of skills, that balance between two people, I immediately think of Mark Zuckerberg and Sean Parker. So if you've ever seen Social Network, Sean Parker is played by Justin Timberlake, and Jesse Eisenberg is obviously Mark Zuckerberg. But when they joined together, Sean Parker was already this hot shot in Palo Alto, who had already started a career with Napster and knew the social network game like crazy. He knew who the connections were. He knew the softwares and the technology, but he was the business guy. And Mark Zuckerberg obviously was a little bit more techie. And their balance between the two led Facebook to grow like immensely, exponentially across the United States. And having a co-founder like that, a co-founder who can balance you out, has different skills than you, brings a different perspective to the table, can really, really elevate your startup.
So once you've chosen your co-founder and you're growing and you're making moves, I think this is the point that you really have to be cautious about your relationship with each other, because I think it's key in these times that you're going to be butting heads when ideas start to come at play and big drivers in different directions you can go. That starts to emerge, then sometimes disputes can happen. And also when you're working with someone nonstop, like I said, we're sending 20,000 Slack messages. I think there's times where you cannot be super empathetic about the other person's lives. And just speaking personally here, I feel like that's even happened on our team. Our team is only two people, James and I, but I think that's even happened on our team. Sometimes I'm not always the most empathetic that James is in class and he's in school. And
vice versa.
Yeah.
I'm not always as empathetic as I could be, because I know you have a full-time job and other priorities and responsibilities outside of that.
Yeah, you expect a lot from your co-founder, so I think it comes from a good place that we know what each other's capable of, but it's just something you have to be aware of, and you have to really, that first thing we talked about, empathy, has to really translate into your co-founder relationship.
And I wrote about this quote from Aaron Rodgers a few weeks ago, and it's all about the measure of a good teammate or good co-founder and what they're willing to put on the line. A measure of a good teammate is what they're willing to put on the line for the company, for the audience, for the Yep Tribe in our case. What are we willing to put on the line? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to provide value to the Yep Tribe or provide value to your audience? And I think that's a really, really key measure for your co-founder or your teammates or your employees. And it's especially important in maintaining that relationship. If your co-founder won't do anything to maybe sacrifice their personal life or sacrifice their career, I don't think that's a good sign. I really don't think that's a very good sign at all. I'm not saying they have to give up everything in their lives, but they have to be willing to sacrifice a little bit of some of those elements in other aspects of their lives in order to keep your company going. Last but not least, we are talking about patience. And I think this is especially important for creators, a little bit more than entrepreneurs, but especially important for creators. So whether you're blogging or podcasting or YouTubing, you need to have patience, because you're not going to get that recognition right away. You're not going to get that tribe, those followers right away. Even if you're providing as much value as you could possibly ask for, you're not going to get that recognition right away. And I have a story about this. I met this girl this summer, and her name is Charlie Prangley. She's from New Zealand, and she's a YouTuber. She YouTubes all about a range of different topics, from fashion to cooking to DIY shirt making. It's literally everything. But she YouTubed for an entire year without a single view on her videos. And then almost overnight, her channel experienced a massive growth. Like, I'm talking thousands and thousands of subscribers. And I'm not saying you have to wait for that overnight success, because that doesn't come to a lot of people. But I'm saying you need to be patient and resilient and persevere through the hard times. And I think that's the definition of grit. One of the most important traits for an entrepreneur. Passion and perseverance for long-term goals.
So I'm a very numbers and data-driven person, and I think this can be sometimes difficult with patience. You can't always look at the metrics. You can't look at how many subscribers you have or how many people are buying your product, because it doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey. So each day I would celebrate the small wins. Something we do at Yep is we have in one of our Slack channels, we have something called tribes. So whenever a new tribe member joins our email list or our network as a whole, we get alerted of their name and we have like celebrate kind of within our Slack. It's just the two of us.
A little mini party.
Yes. And I think you have to celebrate the small wins, and that's part of persistence and grit. That those small wins sometimes can get you through to the big wins. And just know that those big ones, I feel like we still have a long ways to go with Yep and everything. And you just have to keep working, keep doing what you know is right, and keep providing value. And I think you'll get to that success. And that's really easier said than done. And I think it's something that you will encounter and struggle with as a founder.
When I was doing some research for this episode, Madeline, I noticed that in one of these publications that was talking about the patience of an entrepreneur, the author said that nothing is ever finished. So I looked up that word in our Slack channel. I looked up that word finished, and I found it twice.
Wow.
In 20,000 messages.
Wow.
We have said the word finished twice. We are never finished. And that's part of this empathy-based rapid prototyping that we always are doing. You have to be A/B testing everything in order to make sure that you're providing value, but continuing to provide value. Because if you're just putting out the same thing over and over and over and over and just waiting for explosive growth, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. You need to be constantly adapting and constantly growing. And that's the importance of that growth mindset that we talked about. You have to have a passion for learning in order to create better and better services or better and better podcasts. I think that's crucial to really providing value to your tribe.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that makes that so difficult is that entrepreneurs to begin with, I don't know if you'd agree with this. Do you think entrepreneurs are pretty impatient? People like impulsive more. I should say impulsive rather than impatient.
No.
Oh, really?
No, I would not say that at all.
Didn't expect you to say that. Why?
Because I approach everything with a learning mindset. So whenever I fail at something, it's not failing. I just have to readapt it. I'm not going to freak out and scrap my whole project. It's just the matter of taking that fact that something didn't work and shifting from A to B or shifting C around and putting it in front of B, and taking that knowledge that something failed and adapting it so that it can provide value.
That's definitely not what I expected you to say, but I think that's a good lesson within. For me, I am not as thoughtful. I would say I'm pretty impulsive with what I decide to do on a daily basis and even with big projects. And I think that for me, with that impulsiveness comes in patience. And this is something that I really do struggle with. I will say every single day I'm trying to do things that can grow our tribe to even bigger numbers, but I have to realize it's not about that, because we did start it with, if we're helping one person, that's all that matters to us. So always have your main mission and goal in mind, and hopefully that's not tied to any metrics or numbers. I would really stray away from that. Even though I'm a data person, I wouldn't start with numbers. Start with your value, just like we said as our first point.
There's an old Chinese proverb that goes, fall 7 and rise 8. And I think that perfectly describes this element of patience. So yes, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail hard sometimes. You're going to fall 7, but then you take that opportunity to rise 8. Take that knowledge that you failed upon something or something didn't work, and maybe reach out to the people who you failed, and then take that knowledge, adapt what you're doing, learn from it, and rise 8.
Game on.
And this week, we're challenging you to start something of your own. So on our little hiatus, we want you to start thinking and ideating and brainstorming ideas about your passions and what you can provide to the world. Over these next few months into 2019, we'll be providing you with awesome resources and content to help support you along these beginning stages of your journey. Then in 2019, we're launching something pretty exciting. Do you want to tell them about it, James?
Oh yeah. So in early 2019, we have not set an exact date, but we are launching season 2 of the Yepcast. And it's not quite going to be called season 2. It's going to be called the Founder Series. Oh. And what the Founder Series is going to be all about is providing you a toolkit to launch your business. Whether you're in high school, college, or recently graduated, it doesn't matter. We want you to, over these next few months, ideate and really think about your passions in life. What can you uniquely talk about that not many other people can? What can you deliver on and provide enough value to people who want to hear what you're talking about? Think about that, and then in early 2019, we're going to be having some amazing people on the Yepcast. We're going to interview the crap out of some people and really dig deep into what you need to get this business off and running, whether it's a blog, a podcast, or an actual company that has a product or a service. We want to help you launch that company.
And each episode will actually build on the last. So we're going to be starting off with ideation, how to solve for a problem, then going through how to build a brand and going through the technical requirements for a business. We'll cover it all. And if you have ideas or things you're struggling with, feel free to send them in to us. We'd love to kind of orchestrate that in our planning. Again, guys, thank you so much. We are so incredibly grateful for this past 3 months and the experience you've given us, and we've hoped that we've given you. Thanks again, and we'll see you in 2019.
Peace.